So the next person I'd like to introduce you to is Shannan. Shannan has been working as a marketing and business development manager in Southeast Asia for 3 years before transiting to her current role of a business development manager in Asia since last September. So tell me, Shannan, what do you do in your current job?
Sorry, can I do a correction? Okay, so I was working as a marketing and BD manager for Southeast Asia for 3 years before I transited to the current role of BD manager for Asia since last September. So my scope actually has enlarged geographically, but the scope has been condensed in a way because it's sort of a marketing communications came out. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a lot of focus on sales-driven and BD-driven kind of a job function for the company. I work with the senior management team, and we have 4 Asia-wide offices. So I basically try to find strategies and position our services to a really diverse audience across the region to find opportunities for the firm. I basically work across, we try to source for leads across around 15 countries in Asia. I'm based locally, so my role is parked under a global marketing and business development team with direct reporting to my head based in Toronto and my indirect reporting based in Singapore as the president of Asia.
So it's quite a lot of countries you cover from the sounds of it.
Tell me about it.
It involves a lot of travel?
Yeah, so a heavy parcel of the job requires intensive traveling. So you're right, I do a lot of traveling around the region. So that's part and parcel of gathering intel, latest market trends, and understanding what's happening on the ground level in different markets.
Okay, and tell me a bit more about how you ended up as a business development manager.
So that was probably around 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. No, wait, 7. Lost count. Okay, I first started out as a tourism planning and development specialist for a local firm. I worked on overseas projects, and most of them are located in China. So what happened was, after around 4 years in the urban planning industry, and I feel like the learning curve was pretty much stagnant. So I was really hoping to look downstream. If you're not, like the industry itself work in a very interesting spectrum. Urban planning would be something very upstream, and then after that you'll be architecture, interior design, and then you have supply chain. So that's how the whole entire supply chain runs. So when I look downstream, it was more like looking at where architecture and see how I position myself. So the opportunity presented itself when there was a job posting in an international architecture firm looking for a marketing and BD related role. So I actually gate crashed one of their client events and pretended I was a client. I networked with the management and got the contacts. Subsequently, I went for the interview, and they were like, "Wouldn't you the girl we met at a client event?" That's how I landed the job.
It's quite an amazing story.
It's quite something.
Yeah, it must have been pretty shocked.
I didn't plan for it. I just thought I was just trying my luck. Yeah.
And so you gate crashed the party and ended up with a job. And now you've been there for quite a few years now. So you must like something about your work. So what is it about your work you enjoy?
Well, really, admittedly, as an INFJ, I have to admit that I don't really quite... There's a lot of hectic moments going on a daily basis. I'm somebody who really appreciate, whenever just have a few seconds of silence, I treasure those moments. So it's funny because in my company, it's tough to even have a quiet moment unless my bosses go back on summer holidays, and all of them are angmohs, huh? So they go back Australia, France, Canada, and I'll be left alone of the whole summer. But what I really love about a job is that I get to do intense research and intel gathering, talking to people, getting leads from online and online information, getting in a lot of research pieces. So from there, I basically organize all this data into a report. Typically, it's like things about client. I do a lot of client intelligence. So I group all these pieces of information, for example, client overview, firm expansion strategies, into a client mapping kind of report. And from there, I try to find out. It's very gossipy sometimes, you find out who's who in the organization, who are the main decision maker, because you need to know who's giving you that business potentially. So that's what I really do for a living. Which I report to my directors or principals who are actually doing the actual business development. I work with them because it's a very support role. And I feed them this intel. Together with the senior management, we sort of do a little bit of a discussion to see if that particular client has sufficient potential and value that we should pursue. Yeah, so that's what I love. Research is really something that's very nice in this job.
So that's really quite interesting. So you're basically using your INFJ powers and your ability to read people to win business for your boss.
It's pretty true. It's pretty true to a certain extent. There's a lot of, you could say, if you really do meet people in real life, it's a bit of discerning who they are and whether you're going to get intel from that person to help you to get opportunity in. And it's normally not straightforward. Right. In that sense, that capacity really helps. There's a bit of tea involved as well, correct me if I'm wrong, because you're the expert. There's a lot of secondary research online as well, getting intel, getting data, and really forming a big picture. A lot of times you realize in reality, nobody's going to give you perfect, truthful information. You actually have to make sure that it's in line with what you could see online. But you know what? Information is always imperfect. You have to find, really have to strong logical reasoning process together with the INFJ intuition to really gather what you think is the most accurate picture of a potential client before we think about if we should put in enough resources and time to go for it. Because sometimes when you go for a client, you want to get in business, it's going to be a whole firm effort. We have 9 offices across the world. Yeah.
That's really interesting. I've never heard of the INFJ functions being used in a way, but it makes perfect sense. I mean, you're able to kind of converge on the target, which is a client which is potentially has the biggest revenue potential.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of these are international clients. I could give an example. Have you heard of Marriott International? So under Marriott International, you have different brands like Sheraton, you have, whatnot. So under a really huge client umbrella like that, we actually need INFJs people to filter through all this information to look at which brands should we even target, because the whole client is more than enough for us to chew. You know what I mean? So it's a lot of a strategy kind of process at work when I work with our principals and directors in the firm.
That's great. And so the people we work with is very important as INFJs, and you can either energize us or drain us. And it sounds like you work with a lot of different types of people, both in your firm and external clients. So how do you find all these interactions with all these kinds of people?
Very draining. So, I think I'm pretty fortunate because a lot of my closest colleagues are more of the INFP. And really, thankfully, my indirect boss that I see every day on a daily basis is an INTJ. My direct boss based in Toronto, though I don't see her every day, but I go on calls with her. She's an ENTJ. Okay. So I'm actually reporting to a lot of TJs and TJs. So,
and no INFJs in your line of work from the sounds of it, or in your office?
Unfortunately, not that I'm aware of. So we are pretty rare, I have to say. Yeah. So my boss is not I have to say something about her. I love my boss. I love to work with my INTJ boss because on the contrary to public perception about INTJ, well, she's not really the unsympathetic kind of person as long as I don't annoy her too much with my F. Yeah, it's very funny because sometimes if I want to unload some kind of emotions on her, she could be really turned off and she'll stop listening to my logic. But I were to put things in a very factual, based on experience kind of way, the INTJ can really accept the logic and therefore we work really well together in a sense. So there's some kind of chemistry and we share a certain sense of humor that's pretty bizarre that actually helps to ease the tension every day. We laugh at things that other people don't get. So I assume it's more of the rare personalities at work kind of chemistry.
So I guess it's probably the introverted intuition humor. Which not many people get anyway.
She's a Canadian, so she's rather dry, I have to say.
Okay, just on the flip side though, what are some of the things that you don't quite like about your job and you wish you would change? I mean, you were here, you only just arrived for this meetup this evening and it's about 10 o'clock, so I guess you were working pretty late tonight.
I spent quite a couple of minutes on this question because I thought that the main pressure was because it says on your script 100 words maximum. Oh, I tell myself, you know what, there's tons of things I would want to change this company, but really, well, I guess, just being an INFJ perspective, I work in a, what you call, business point of view, a matrix organizational structure where you have a direct reporting based very far away and an indirect reporting boss based here that I see every day. So sometimes I feel there's a lot of stress and tension because I'm in this kind of a three-way relationship where I feel very obliged to want to keep an equilibrium. So I have to say things like, boss A, here, hey, I told boss B this and I thought I should tell you this so that the three of us are on the same page, there's no miscommunication across time zone. So sometimes there's a lot of stress to make sure that communications are same par, so we all move together globally as well as at the regional level. It's very lot of stress. So that's one thing I would change. So I would just feel that if we will have to have a job function that's marketing or business development related, perhaps you make life easier if we have a singular function. Just have a candidate in my role report to a direct reporting based in Asia and that's it. You don't need a dual indirect reporting base elsewhere. Right. But the constraint is that because we are a Canadian firm, so the kind of thing, so my boss itself, she's based in Toronto because that's the headquarters. So it's something that I couldn't quite, I can't do anything about it. Sure. But ideally, I don't think the matrix organizational structure works for INFJs.
Right. Yeah. So you prefer more streamlined and flatter structure whereby.
I guess you can say that, really. Something that's really, really more singular and not so...
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. It's not so complicated. Yeah.
So you've worked in this industry quite a few years now. So what are your thoughts in referring or recommending what you're doing to other INFJs, whether as fresh graduates or something they're going to as a mid-career shift?
Well, again, I have to say that the nature of my role, scope, and the position in the firm is rather unique. When I first started on this job posting, a couple of months later, my bosses actually told me this is a newly created position. So there's a lot of improvements that can be made to this, but just advice to fresh graduates for INFJs, I think it's something that I would advise people to really look into it. If you have the relevant background, if you study the marketing or BD related discipline or anything to do with business, this is something you can go into. Yeah, there's no doubt. But however, I think if the scope, I guess because INFJs, we are very responsible people, we always want things to be perfect, down to the minute details. So I just kind of feel like at some point, if the scope can be scaled down reasonably, and if there's more focus on certain things that intrigue us, like in terms of maybe doing research, on strategy, on something big picture, that might keep the INFJ person going.
Right.
So that's how...
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
That's how I feel, yeah.
Right. That's great. And is this something you can foresee yourself doing for long term or for the rest of your life?
So having spent the last 4 years here, I would say that I would foresee I can only sustain it for the next 3 more years. Because this also takes into account my relocation plans to Shanghai, which will happen by the next quarter. So I guess I probably just, again, I guess the learning curve is not up, but I kind of need a shift of environment, and the opportunity again presented itself. My bosses offered me a stint in Shanghai, so for that I would say that I might work for a couple more years, but it's not going to be I wouldn't say it's like a lifetime soulmate job.
Okay. So if your 3-year plan is going to shift away from this industry, do you have any vision for your ideal job and how that would look like?
I'm actually pretty much a practical person, so I don't know, sometimes I'm in a conundrum as well, in terms of really a total job shift versus something that's bread and butter. I would just put it this way, if I have a chance at a second life, I want to be a movie director. So, but then you cannot be things like King Kong and all that. It has to be very meaningful production. You have to maintain this, it has to be something that I feel is value adding to humanity and something that will inspire and value add to people, that there's a message inside. But I always have a love for creative photography and visual things like that. So really, if I have a chance at a second life, I might just go into that. Yeah. With that, I would like to, because I work in architecture, I don't know if it's possible to look at this picture.
You can bring it closer.
This is the...
That camera. Oh, you can zoom in. You can zoom in actually.
Yeah. You could see this visual. It's very interesting. The upper portion showcases two buildings looking at each other. That was actually put forward by my architecture colleagues as they were enjoying the sky view of a recent hotel development. So I ended up with telling my colleagues, hey guys, you know what? I'll be a movie director. And that's it. I'll be doing a King Kong versus dinosaur thing. And I parked that image just down side by side as a really bad joke to the designers. But then that's all I have to say. So if I have a second take at this, I'll probably do something more meaningful. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shannan, and for sharing that very colourful vision of yours. King Kong.
Most welcome.
This is Godzilla. Okay. So I'd like to open up to the floor for any questions for Shannan about her job.
I didn't know there's a Q&A. It's
We didn't have time
still
to-
recorded.
So if like you're too busy or too stressed out, what's your coping mechanism?
If the question is if you're too busy or too stressed out, what's your coping mechanism?
I drink wine. Sometimes I do extreme S stuffs.
Can you tell me about extreme S?
No, I mean like, I actually enjoy skydiving, so it's pretty queer because I always have a fear of falling. But I really experienced skydiving when I went Gold Coast around just a month ago, and I realized I really love that thrills of it. So, sometimes I take time off, I enjoy wine, do a bit of extreme S things like that. And day-to-day basis, I actually have aromatherapy oil to help me get by. It's very important. So every morning, one of my daily routines before I get out of the house is to make sure I take a deep whiff of this oil, and then I have affirmations that it's going to be a good day ahead, I can get by. And then that's it, I left the house.
Thank you for that. Any other questions? If that's so, I'd like to close the evening here. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you, Shannan, for sharing with us your work.
Thank you.
Thank you.